He, of course, is at the forefront of MMA technology, anything involving our UFC athletes to the highest level, and he'll explain a little bit more about this exciting announcement that's been a project that's taken more than 5 years to complete. So we're very excited to make this announcement today. It's been quite a road, Duncan, hasn't it?
Absolutely, it's been very exciting, and there's been many contributors across the UFC ecosystem that have been involved in this project from its inception many years ago, and it's great to get to today where we're launching the new gloves.
So tell a little bit about what you do for the UFC Performance Institute.
Yeah, so I'm the Senior Vice President of the Performance Institute. As many in the room are aware, that's kind of the high-performance service infrastructure. We support the athletes with a variety of different services, everything from sports science applications through to nutrition. It's been a busy day for weight cuts today, and medical services. And then we get brought into, obviously, supporting projects that have been led by other departments within the UFC here. Ember talking in the commercial products group about exciting things like glove and equipment, and ultimately the Performance Institute interacts with the athletes on a daily basis. We aggregate information and data, and we've been able to do that in this project as well.
And something that was mentioned is that the technology has changed so much, and so much has evolved in this sport, but the glove really hadn't for the UFC. What is your excitement level at what this brings for the athletes that you work with?
Yeah, I mean, as you saw in the video, the UFC's had evolutions in many aspects of its operation, from the octagon to the fightwear to the Performance Institute to the way that we produce the shows. And the one thing that's really been static for 10, 11, 12 years is the one critical component of the sport, and that's the glove. So to go down this route of redesign and redevelopment, I think it's critical. Using our partners in Visis and Diaco and V-Chain that we can talk to here momentarily as well, they've all been intimately involved in this process. So it's really been a collaboration of many minds coming together for the health and safety of our athletes. They're the asset of the UFC that we have, and we want to do everything to protect them and support them and put them in a health and safe environment. But also we've done that by bringing new technology and new information and new design to the glove.
So when you think about these gloves and when you explain it, what are the cool features that you're excited about that really benefits the athletes?
Yeah, there's really so many, and it seems very subtle, but there are lots of aspects to it. Not only is the glove lighter, we've moved to a universal unisex sizing approach, so there's no longer female and male gloves. It's a unisex sizing. So we hope that will have a better form within the glove itself. Then you move to kind of the function and the performance of the glove, and there's so many cool aspects to that. Ember spoke about the padding and the slip planes, and the contour features that will mold to the athlete's knuckles and their hand more adequately. Through to new technologies like I mentioned, V-Chain, and we're putting chips into the glove now so that we can actually authenticate every single glove as well. So whether it's manufacturing, the design, the technology, the new age materials that have gone into the glove, it's very, very exciting.
Can you explain more about the chip technology? So to authenticate the glove, from what I understand, is that each glove will almost be registered and you'll be able to tell which bout they were used for. Is there more to the chip technology than just the authentication part?
Absolutely, you've nailed it. There is no kind of diagnostic part related to the chip. It's very much an authentication piece. What that means is that any athlete that goes into the octagon, as soon as they put their gloves on, we can authenticate that glove. We can record that athlete against that bout, and when they leave the octagon, if a fan wants to purchase or secure those gloves, at any point in that process, we can authenticate the glove and ensure that it is, a title glove and who wore it, whatever that may be.
And coming to work at the UFC Performance Institute each day, while the athletes were testing them out in the Contender Series last season, which I didn't even know that we were kind of covertly testing out this glove on Dana White's Contender Series. Can you go through some of the functions of the glove, the seams on the inside, and the different functions for fighters that will benefit them?
Yeah, absolutely, and that's been the beauty of the Performance Institute through this process. We've taken the testimonials and the guidance of the athletes all the way through. Every step of the way, whether it was the evaluation and interrogation of the old glove to understand its pros and cons and how we've used that information to then obviously direct the ideation of the new glove, the athletes have been engaged throughout that whole process. There's some really unique features. I think the impact pad system, which allows the flexion of the hand to fall into a more natural position. I mean, the talk around eye pokes is obviously very topical and current, and nobody wants to see eye pokes in our bouts, It really disrupts the cadence of the production. But the old glove really had quite stiff foam, which held the hand in a very rigid position. So as athletes were trying to close their fist throughout a fight, that would fatigue their hand and ultimately return this to the position where the fingers were outward facing. The new technology that the Vices have brought to the table with our slip planes allows the hand to sit in a much more natural position, so the fingers now are no longer kind of facing forwards. We've got protection on both sides of the glove now that was not previously there, so whether it's those hammer fists or those heavy overhand punches that potentially will impact second or fifth metacarpals, we've now got protection around those. The strapping on the wrist, the nature in which that will now have a much more secure and tight fit to the athlete's hand, mitigating any ability of opponents to get their fingers inside there, which we see. People are tactical in what they're trying to do. So yeah, we've tried to think about every aspect of the sport. But the key thing which we ultimately wanted to do was not change the sport in any way, shape, or form. We didn't want to see sudden spikes in knockouts or things that would reflect, hey, yeah, we've got a new glove, but it's totally changed the nature of the sport. That's been critical to the design brief from day one. We don't want to change the nature of the sport, but we absolutely want to enhance the form, the fit, and the performance of the glove for the athletes.
What do you think will change when we do watch? If you don't want to change the sport or add to the knockouts or anything like that, how do you expect the fights to maybe go a bit differently because of the improvement in the glove?
Well, listen, everyone's ambition is to, ensure that we reduce, hand breaks or fractures of the bones within the hand. Everyone is trying to seek a way to, reduce or mitigate eye pokes. The nature of an MMA glove where your fingers are exposed, we're never going to be able to take away or completely eradicate eye pokes. But ultimately what we want to see is reducing that significantly, and we hope that will be the case with the way in which the new glove sits.
We do have some samples. It looks like they're being passed around out here, so you guys can kind of check it out for yourself. What was the decision process in redesigning the glove?
I mean, it starts at the top with Dana and everybody else, but ultimately, when Ember and Tracy's team in commercial products who work with the equipment teams and the cut men that are doing the hand wraps, there was just a recognition that there's not been an evolution. There's not been an evolution in this critical part of our sport, and I think that pollinated the momentum around, okay, can we explore the opportunity to build into a new glove launch? And
what's it like for you, this process that's taken more than 5 years to be involved in?
I mean, listen, I geek out on this stuff. I'm a scientist, right? So, where we take, data and information and scientific application and really put it into a tool that is used in a very applied fashion. I love that, and I think we've been very thorough in our approach here. We've lent on some critical partners in Vices that have done all the R&D and the evaluation and the ideation and design. We've obviously aligned with our current manufacturers in Diaco to bring this design concept to life. So along the way, whether it's Dr. Davidson and the medical team and their input, whether it's the Performance Institute and the athletes, or whether it's our partners that we lean on so importantly, this 5-year journey has been exceptional, and I think we've arrived at a really, really good place.
We saw Vanessa Demopoulos in the video and Julian Arosa giving their thoughts. What has been the consensus thought that fighters keep bringing back to you in terms of feedback as they've tested it at the PI?
Yeah, the overwhelming one has always been how mobile and flexible it is, and how they can get dexterity in their hands. And I think that's been, you heard Vanessa, excuse me, on the video talk about, I can grapple, I can grab, it's easy for me to close my fist and clench, and that's been by design. And I think that's been an overwhelming positive that the athletes have reported, is just the dexterity of the glove. I think they like the design features, as I say, the reduction in the seams and the removal of some of the stitching. So we're minimizing and mitigating those abrasions and cuts, hopefully. And also, when they're hitting the bags, the feel and they're reporting, the sensation of force, application, and how it feels in the comfort in the glove, was all very rewarding to us as the team developing it.
And then anything that we learned after they were in actual competition at Dana White's Contender Series, not just in the training room.
Yeah, so I mean, listen, I'm sure we're all excited that it wasn't identified that in Series 7 of Contender we were actually trialing the new glove, but again, that was a huge success, and I think that information from those 100 or so fighters that were in Series 7, we've been able to take that data and that information, compare it to the previous Contender Series, performance metrics, be that knockouts, finishes, those characteristics that you would think would be impacted or related to the glove and the nature of the glove. They've all been very static, which is ultimately what we wanted to see. So Series 7 versus the other series, no difference in the performance metrics, even though the fighters were wearing a new glove. So, big check in that box. As I say, we didn't want to change the nature of the sport. But the athletes coming out of Contender in Series 7, again, we're reporting, it takes a little bit of time for people to feel a new tool. There's obviously a behavioral change and figuring it out and what's the differences, but overwhelmingly positive across the board.
And then we'll open it up for questions in just a moment. But first, the last question for me: when are we going to see these new gloves inside the octagon for the first time?
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously today we're excited to launch the glove. The glove will be worn in live combat in UFC at Newark for UFC 302 on June 1st. So what we will be doing starting tomorrow with the athletes that are on that Newark card, they will be receiving the new glove to essentially practice in the glove for the next 2 months going into Newark.
All right, and that's when fans will be able to purchase those as well. My friend Tracy just told me that in the lead up to UFC 302 in Newark. Does any of our media friends have any questions for Duncan French? Jose?
I got one. I'm sorry, apologies if you already answered this, but on the sheet we got, I noticed that it's like a 1.5 pound difference from the current gloves, or ounces, I should say. So I guess what went into the thought to kind of reduce the weight of these gloves?
Well, the reduction in weight was kind of a two-part response to your question. Ultimately, what we found in the interrogation of the old glove, that there was a lot of excess material. Whether that was underneath the fingers that, again, restricted the ability to make a fist and clinch, or whether that was kind of on some of the exterior parts around the palm. So by being able to take away material, being able to take away the extra leather, we've also been able to reduce the weight, okay? But ultimately we wanted a much more streamlined fit and a much more form fit. And we're now working with impact molded foam rather than hand cut foam, so we have much more consistency across all of our sizing. So when athletes are coming to use the glove, yes, the reduction in weight is related to our ability to redesign and remove some of the fat off the bone a little bit.
Kind of going off of that, it also says it's going to be between 3 and 4.9 ounces rather than just 4 across the board. Is that just because of the size of?
Correct. Yeah. I mean, listen, we've got I think a 4XS through to a 3XL. So by nature, it's just a bigger hand. We have to use more material, but the difference between the actual weights from the smallest to the largest size has also been reduced on that delta. So that's another important point to make.
You mentioned the data from kind of field testing it in the Contender Series. Did you see a decrease in eye pokes?
So eye pokes is an interesting one in as much as, recently we've seen a lot of eye pokes. There's about 36 eye pokes on a yearly basis as an average since 2019 in the UFC. An eye poke happens about every 14 fights. And the average duration of a stoppage for an eye poke is about 50 seconds. But that can be up to 5 minutes, as we well know, and a bout can be finished. So eye pokes are a very interesting topic. When we've looked at the information, and again, leaning on our colleagues within UFC Stats and 3027 that record all this information for us, the information around eye pokes from Series 1 through 6 of the Contender was significantly greater than Series 7. So we actually saw a reduction in eye pokes in that 7th series when we were wearing the glove. Now, again, we hope that is a consequence of the redesign and the nature of the glove, but we're all watching moving forwards to ensure that this is going to be the case.
You mentioned kind of wanting to see a static result from some of the other comparisons. I'm curious, like, what would it have looked like? Would you have seen like an increase in knockouts or a decrease in knockouts? Would you have seen that as an indication?
Correct. Yeah. I mean, if we change the nature of a foam or the construct of a glove, and now that glove is impacting an athlete, the last thing we would want to see is a huge spike or an elevation in knockouts that are consequent to the way we've redesigned the materials in the glove. So that's actually a very tricky design brief that we gave to Vices, in as much as we don't want anything in the sport to change regarding finishes or stoppages or knockouts, but we really want to improve, the safety in as much as can we distribute the pressure of the forces across the hand in a different way? Can we reduce the cuts and abrasions that I've spoke to? So yes, there were certain performance metrics that we just wanted to be static, because at the end of the day, MMA is MMA, and we don't really want to change that in any way, shape or form by ultimately changing the tool that is involved within the fight.
Actually, I have one more. How, if at all, will this affect hand wraps, like before the fights?
Yeah, I mean, as I've mentioned, it's more of a streamlined and low-profile glove. It fits the athlete's hands much more accurately. So there will be a small adaptation to the hand wraps, and again, we're connected with all the cut men to do that. The cut men have been, a number of the cut men have been involved intimately throughout this whole process. So, what we're expecting is that the need for excessive amounts of taping and hand wraps will be reduced somewhat, because the fit of the glove will be much more accurate.
Any other questions? Oh, Alex, go ahead.
What's the red glove being used for?
So the red glove is for events like the Road to the UFC in Asia, or if we have other UFC assets that come online, we would potentially use the red glove for that.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Duncan French, great job. Thank you very much. Great job, Ember, on the video. And thank you, everybody, for joining us for this exciting time. UFC 302 in Newark. We'll see these new gloves in action. Have a great weekend.